And so and I've been through it my own self. Where they are, I've been there. And in my own family, I have relatives that I did not know. Back in, I think it was like 2001 or 2002, I get an email out of the blues from a man in Germany who explained to me that that he wanted to hire me to find his African American Army father. He knew that much. Unknown to him and unknown to me at the time. I didn't want to take him, matter of fact. I said, oh my God, he's going to wear me to death, blah, blah, blah. And he's overseas and all of this, and boy. And so I ended up taking him because I have this spiritual thing about me when I do something. It's how it moves my spirit. His last name was Clark. My grandmother's maiden name, my father's mother, is Clark. He liked Lou Ross. I like Lou Ross. He likes, what else he was born October the 8th. My daughter was born October the 8th. He was born in 1947. I was born in 1957. He was as a social worker. My daughter is a social worker. I said, maybe the spirits are telling me to take him. And I took him, and within 1 week, I find out that he is my great uncle's child that he left behind in Germany. And I kept telling him no, but every time I tell him no, something connects. I'm 10 years old or 40. He said, oh, you're born on October the 8th, my daughter, And then I said, well, I'll just try. I had no clue that he was my great uncle. But I never met my great uncle, but I have worked up my family, so I know my relatives. And so he said that he never met his father, that his mother put him in foster care. Her stepfather was a Nazi, and they told her when she was pregnant by a African American that if she has that baby, they'll kill her and the baby. So she put the baby up for adoption. I mean, not adoption. She put him in foster care. She could not let somebody adopt him because she really wanted to keep him. So, only thing he had about his father that his mother knew, that his father, not was from Halifax County, but his father was from Roanoke, Virginia, and he lived on Early Street with his sister before he went into the military. My great uncle, his father's name was James. My great uncle name is James. My great uncle migrated to Roanoke to live with his sister. I never met them because they were in a different, whole different age group. They were dead by the time I was born. Not his father. His father didn't die until the 80s. But anyway, I knew enough. So I said, this sounds strange. So anyway, one place I thought to look, I had to drive to Richmond and look at the city directories of Roanoke, because they have all the city directories of all the counties in Virginia. And when I looked in the city directory, I told him, I said, his name is James Clark. There's going to be a lot of Clarks with the first name James. Do you have any other identification that help? He said, I just know he lived on Early Street. I said, okay. So I had to start before the war. So I started with 1935. And I see about 5 or 6 James, nobody living on Early Street. And I go from year to year. When I get to 1941, one of the James is living on Early Street, and I almost pass out. I said, oh my God, I found you. Don't move. And then I called my husband. He was in school, and I got them to get him out of the class. I said, you got to buy me a calling card. He did. And I called Harold, was my cousin's name. And I didn't pay attention to time. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning their time. And I kept ringing. Finally he answered. He said, yeah. I finished say, I never asked him could he speak English. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been communicating on email. And I said, I'm Char. Huh? I said, I'm Char the genealogist. Oh, oh. I said, I found your father. You found my papa? You found my papa? I said, yes. I said, oh, I'm so sorry, but he's dead though. He said, oh, my papa is dead? I said, yes. I said, but you have lots and lots of cousins. Me? I have cousins? I have cousins? I said, yes. I said, I'm one of them. He said, what? I said, your James Clark is my James Clark. Your James Clark is living in the household of his sister, right? Yeah. His sister is my great aunt. So he's my great uncle. Oh, he started crying. I said, look, Harold, please don't cry. I'm paying for this call. You can cry after I hang up. So anyway, we talked, and so I said, I have lots of work to do. I said, everything about your dad, I'm going to find out. At that time, I retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I was a policy writer there. One good thing that I was able to get his military records ASAP instead of waiting a long time, like most people would have to wait when they request his military records. I had his military records sent to VA so I can review them, the location I was at. In there, his father never mentioned Harold, but he does mention that he has more than one child. Evidently, he ended up marrying another lady, and they had a daughter. And when he was coming back to the U.S., he put down he had 2 children, but he didn't mention the name. The daughter he had, of course, he mentioned her. He brought her back to the U.S. She had polio, and he never brought Harold back. And so I was able to get the military. I knew every place he was located. He was in Hamburg, where Harold was born and lived. And then he went on to another part of Germany. And he wanted to stay in the military. And this was in the 60s. They said he was getting old, so he had to get out. He was born in the, though his age was off, they had him younger, but he was really born around 1898. And he had, I think, 19 something was his age. He was born. And so he comes back with his daughter, and he's still in the military until he gets out, I think, to get his years, so they let him give him light duty. And he makes his brother the guardian of his daughter when he brings her back, because his wife died from, I think she had liver disease or something. She dies before they come back to the U.S. So he's now raising the daughter by himself. And so that's my other uncle, John. Never met any of them, because John died in the 70s, but I never met him. And so what happened is that John was a minister. And I end up researching and finding John's second wife he was married to. She was deceased by the time I located her, but I found her children who lived in the same house. Her kids were grown, and they had everything intact there. And the letters they gave me that James wrote his brother John while he was in the military. Over 300-something pictures I inherited. And I was able, and she said, anything of your of your uncles here, your great uncle, you can have. The house was intact, like they were living there, because the granddaughter would just dust off everything, and she just kept everything intact. And she gave me everything. And they that was in Baltimore, where BWI, matter of fact, her family owned all of BWI and all that land over the years, urban, we call it urban removal, but urban, but they end up losing that property. And so anyway, got that information together. I traveled to New York to go to the last apartment my uncle lived in while he was still in the military. And went there, knocked on the door, and told the people why I was there or whatever. And they let me come in and see the apartment. He lived in brownstone, but lived on the top floor. And then I went out to, they sent him out to, he was out to Colorado. I went there. I did all of that. And I went to Roanoke, Virginia, Salem, Virginia. He died at the VA hospital there based on his military records. And I went there, and I told him that my cousin was going to fly in and that I wanted to check all these places, so I want to bring him there. And so Harold flew in, and I was able to take him to a VA where they honored him with the flag and, of his father and his medals that his dad. I was able to get those. have them reissue those to him. And then the cemetery he was buried at in Halifax County. He dies in Salem, but he's buried in Halifax County Cemetery. They said they had no headstone. I said, no, 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 no. You don't know my people. It would not have cost him anything. He has it. I said, free? Oh, no, he has it. And they couldn't find it. So I made arrangements I had to find the funeral director, because that particular funeral director went out of business. He was working in the county over. I found him and told him I want him in Halifax. Harold and myself and my husband, we are coming. We get there, and we get to the cemetery, and we divide it up in 4. My husband takes one section, Harold takes another section, funeral director and I. I say, touch every headstone and every medal and look at it. Make sure it's not him. It's James Clark. Okay, we're looking for him. I told him his age and when he died. The first one I touch is him. And I said, Harold, I found your daddy. And he said, no, no, you're not too sure. I said, this is your daddy. Don't you know your daddy? So he looks at the headstone, and he kneels, he cries. That was too emotional, because I have to keep my emotions separate from my research. If I get emotional, I cannot do it. So I have to. So I separated myself, left, and went and sat in the car while he boo-hoo cried. And then he wanted another headstone of his dad, and he wanted to keep that one. And so we took him to a place he ordered, and it had his father's name on it, and he said, from your son Harold, stolen from Germany with love. And then he put his children's name at the bottom of it, and it's still there. And I know what it did for my family. When Harold arrived at the airport, between my genie girlfriends and my family, and everything, and I took him from household to household. I took him to Halifax County. I took him to Salem, and told them I was bringing him. So what they did, that particular room his dad died in is adult daycare. And so they blocked it off so nobody can go in there for the hours that he wanted to be in there, in the space that his dad died in. The cemetery that he left his mark there by getting the headstone, I took him to New York, and the place his dad stayed, the apartment he stayed in, the brownstone, the people were nice to let him come to have that moment. And then I told him Colorado was a little bit out of my budget at this moment, so we didn't do that. We went to Danville, Virginia, where his dad, moved around, and he enlisted in the military there. The last surviving child of my that's in that family, my great uncle Tom, he was already deceased, so he got to meet his daughter. And then I took him to Baltimore, where his Uncle John was minister of the church. We went to the church, so I gave him the whole grand tour. And then before he left, I had made copies of the 300 and something pictures of his dad. And his dad sent pictures of himself in Germany, pictures during the wartime where some of the building was bombed and he was standing in front of the bomb. When he married his wife over there, he had the marriage pictures there. His sister that he never knew he had, that had died, she died in the U.S. though when he brought her back. He had pictures of her. He didn't know he had a sibling. And she was about, I think she was born in, he was born in 1947, and I think she was born in 1949. And so the genie world is something that I didn't major in, but because of my investigative skills and my research skills that I acquired in college and after college, and I was a policy writer for the federal government, and I constantly had to research policy, all of that came together as one to make it possible for me to do the things that I do. Families in Alexandria, I remember getting somebody from Shiloh Baptist Church. She had been adopted, and her adopted mother died, and she was really just a mess, and wanted to know who she belonged to. And nobody in the church would tell her anything. She said they knew, and they wouldn't tell her anything. And so what happened is that she asked me, is there any way possible that she can find out who was her parents. And so first, when I met with her, I bought a box of tissue, gave her a box, and I had a tissue box for myself. We cried, and I told her I'd do my best. And what I found out in the research process, she right, nobody in that church would talk, but I got certain skills. And so I found out a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from there. And so found out that her mother was from Norfolk, Virginia, and she got pregnant out of wedlock. And they sent her to Alexandria to a relative until the child was born. And she was born, and then she was given, I think it was a state adoption, and the records were sealed. So once I had the age of the mother, and once I knew she came from Norfolk, Virginia, I knew approximately when she graduated from high school. And so then I started talking to people I knew down in that area. Because luckily, in my age group, it's only one black school usually, one black high school, which is a plus. Segregation was bad, but for genealogists, it's good because you can almost, say, okay. So what happened is that started working that, and then found out from talking to different classes, knowing that she graduated probably out of this class. I had 2 years that she could have graduated out. Found out that somebody that was going to school had relatives in Alexandria. And she stayed there in Alexandria for a year. So there was a possibility. So what happened, I gathered as much information I gathered, and then I contacted state adoption. And based on when I gave the name, bingo. But they wouldn't give us any other information. So then I asked, could she write a letter? And they sent it to the mother, the last known address of the mother. And that's what they did. And what happened is that she did not want to be in contact. But now, since I had her name, I did further research and found out that the situation was with a prominent person, and the family did not want to, knew they were not prominent and that would get them in trouble. And so I gave her that information about who her father was. And I don't know whether it made her feel better or not, because she was in pieces when she came to me. But I felt I was at least able to give her something. I couldn't make this, the people, talk to her. I can't make them be parents, but at least you know who they are. And so that, and then I had other cases in Alexandria that was able to put people through. So I do a lot of work in Alexandria. People said, "You only do Alexandria?" I said, "No, I can do any place." I said, but I was born here. And I said, and this is my gift to Alexandria, is that if I can make someone feel whole, and I can especially change a child to go straight instead of bad, because they think they don't have nothing to offer, they don't think they came out of anything, then I'm proud to do that. And that's the reason why I do what I do. Oh, God, no. It was like so, okay, we never knew we had a Buffalo Soldier, which I talked about. And then for my family, or just genealogy period? In general. Almost every case, because with Frances Norton, it's almost like a sister to me. Her sister just finished talking about the family. But Frances was the one that I found the information about the whole family that led me to Frederick, and I hope it come to be bigger than that when we work on trying to get an exhibit done on them. To see the emotions, and though I get a headache when I cry, and I can't work with nothing afterward. I got to go take Tylenol, lay down, or whatever, and get over it. But to see the joy afterwards, it's nothing like it. I tell people I don't drink, but I drink genealogy, and it puts me on a high like nobody's business. Also, working on the Freedman Cemetery and seeing when I contact people, I say, your people have been buried there. The sadness comes with that. But they have that connection, and they know. And when I said they came in from, Alexandria had a large amount of people during the Civil War leaving Fauquier County, Virginia, coming here. That's the largest number that I have worked on. Then the other is Prince William County, and that came here. And then the other number is the people coming from Maryland, and they were taking owners' boats and getting over here. So some of them had no idea. Some didn't even have idea that folks were in Alexandria during the Civil War. The other thing is that that I been able to do is that Parker Gray was named after two people, John F. Parker and Sarah A. Gray. Sarah never married. John F. Parker did marry. When I started working on them out of projects, because that's what I do. I do genealogy every day, So anyway, so I said, I need a project. So I decided to look at John F. Parker and Sarah A. Gray. John F. Parker, I was able to locate his slave owner. I didn't even know he was a slave at first. And when he taught at Snowden School for Boys before they had Parker Gray. That was the early black school. And then Hollowell School for Girls, excuse me. So what happened is that when he got the job at Snowden School, they had in the paper that John F. Parker is going to be principal of Snowden School, a former slave, the slave of this person, all in the newspaper. And I somehow think that these deceased people want you to research them, and they lead you to these things, because that stuff been in paper for a long time. Why did it show up when I was looking for it? I don't know. But somehow it's a spiritual thing that goes on. It happens to me all the time. And all of a sudden it's just laid out. It's hard to find a slave owner because many African Americans in cities did not take the last name of their owner. So their owner has a totally different surname than theirs. So how are you going to be able to identify that unless they told that story to their children? They passed it down generation to generation. And very few talked about slavery. And very few African Americans talked about slavery. It's too painful. It's lots of pain. And I think our people had decided we won't talk about it, and therefore, they don't need to know about the pain or whatever. And they needed to know about the pain so they can get that over with to move forward. So what happened is that mentioned who his slave owner was, and that was it. I mean, I was on the road then. His slave owner died before the Civil War ended. John F. Parker had a brother named William Madison Parker, and he married his first wife among West Ford, who's well known down in Gum Spring. He was a slave of George Washington. He marries his daughter. And anyway, what happened is that his wife dies and he marries again. He marries a white American that had to change her race to mulatto because it was against the law for them to marry. So good stuff. She never told her children who her parents were. And her last name was Ho. And Ho was, I guess if you would call him the first mayor, he was very prominent in Alexandria. Could that have been her father? I don't know. She really had to break off with her family for doing this. Now, John F. Parker was considered a dark mulatto. He could not pass. His brother was lighter than he was. And then he marries Sarah Ho, and she's white. And so all their children are very, very light. And their children still live around in Alexandria in the area. Their grandchildren. And their grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, are carrying the last name Dogan. The Dogans were free African Americans in this city. And I have traced them back. to into the 1700s. And so just one family after another. Alexandria had a lot of free blacks, and so more than you would think for a southern city. And it's just finding out the history and how it all connects. And basically, a lot of people are really related to each other, don't know that. The book that I'm working on is my third book, and a tentative name of the book, Outsider Looking In, and where I researched Seminary and Fort Ward areas. And I'm finding amazing, amazing stories, amazing stuff up there. And many of the families don't even know. They do not know. So it's my gift to them. Know who you are, whether it's good, the bad, or the ugly. It makes you a better person. We all got it. We all got it in us. We all got the same ingredients. You know, you throw a little bad stuff, you throw a little good stuff, and you know, we like a gumbo. We come back on it, it's very spicy and nice. But know it. It makes your kids, you know, proud. It makes them know that, you know, you got ancestors who coming out of slavery have nothing. The clothes on their back is ragged and tarred and everything. And they get their job making pennies. It's like it's another form of slavery, the amount of money they're paying. But they take that and they put it together and they get not one job, they work 2 other jobs, 3 jobs, and they buy land and they build their house. Don't you think your kids need to know that? Don't get caught up with the slave part. We can't do anything. The history is history. But look what they came out of and look what they did. They need to know that. And knowing that they're not going, the children knowing they're not going to get anything free. They got to work for it. You know, just like their ancestors had to work for it, you know. So knowing your history to me is the most important because you can do anything. You know not to make the same mistakes, you know. Like I got, in my family, I had quite a few bootleggers, and they loved their role they played. But some of them got caught, and some of them never got caught. So if you're going to be a bootlegger, don't do what that one did who got caught, you know. So you need to know, so you won't be making the same mistakes. And then for the ones who really flourish, they left you a roadmap how to get there. Look at their life. So all of the, the people that I have researched, I've been fortunate to research. I'm very proud of that work. I have seen them transform. I have seen their interest in even in American history, because even though we talk about the dark part of African American history, we still are part of the overall American history, and that to me make you a better person. You can't tell me about suffering. I know what suffering is. You can't tell me about, my place. If I have research, I know my place and where I'm supposed to go. And it's all good, Yes, it got bad spots, but it's good to know who you are.